You guys have been asking me to cover this Inside Out tape created by L30-K72, and this one's actually really interesting. It's a mix of like horror AU and also has elements of an infection AU, but just a fair warning, this is definitely one of the darker AUs that we've covered on this channel. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Inside Out films. They basically deal with this young lady named Riley and how her emotions try to help her deal with common events that happen in childhood. Although, considering that this first episode is called Traumatized, I imagine that the emotions are going to have a hard time with this one. And we get the first glimpse of this when we see Riley curled up on the floor and the text reads that her condition is uncontrolled. And this seems to have something to do with a memory that is plaguing her mind. And with Joy being her typical self, she's basically trying to find a way to remove that memory, and she's not really having any luck with it. Next, we get to look at the memory that's haunting her, and it seems to be a scene where her family is driving and they run into something in the road. And we can assume that this leads her family to either being injured or worse. And then we get this creepy voice asking if Riley ever wondered why she feels like this, why everything in her life seems to make no sense. And then we see this. Now, some of you may be wondering what emotion this is and why it would attack Joy, but from my understanding, this character isn't an emotion at all. Now, while initially I thought that this character was supposed to represent trauma due to that being the name of the episode, as we go through the series, you'll see why my mind kind of changes, but then we're going to circle back to this, so remember the name. Now, after that scene, we see that Joy actually starts to transform after being attacked, and we get to see that over the course of 5 days, she starts to look more and more deranged. And as the comment section has pointed out, she almost looks like something out of the Mandela catalog, which if you've ever seen some of those animations, that is very accurate. Now, after seeing Joy slowly losing her sanity, Anxiety had the idea to actually trap her inside of a jar, but little did they know that our mystery creature was still roaming around, attacking other emotions. And for those of you wondering why this creature basically elongated Envy's body here, it was so that she could actually be tall enough to release Joy, meaning that at least 2 deranged emotions are now running around inside of Riley. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that Joy and Envy are the first ones to be corrupted. If Riley is depressed or going through something psychologically, it would make sense that Joy would be the first thing that she loses. And I also understand why Envy will go out of control, because she's probably wishing that she could just live a normal life like the other kids and not have to suffer through whatever she's going through. Next, we see Fear, and they're letting us know that with the escape of Joy, some other emotions have been affected, starting with sadness, and then we see anger, then we see disgust, and finally embarrassment. But luckily, ennui, which just means boredom, and anxiety actually managed to escape. Although Anxiety is pretty messed up. He's actually like missing his eyes. While I know people hate talking about symbolism, I do find it interesting that Anxiety is actually missing their eyes. I feel like this is supposed to represent like how Riley is trying to either repress something or pretend like she doesn't see something that is happening right under her nose. Now, in the final scene of this episode, we hear this mysterious attacker telling Riley that she is nothing without them. And I believe that them is actually her parents. And then it says that it's time to make some changes. Time to have a new idea. And then we see this creature put an idea into the console. And before we fade out, we see Riley looking sad and lost with some new, likely terrible idea floating around in her head. The next chapter, which looks like its title is gibberish, actually isn't. When looking in the comments, I saw this person named Max state that this title actually means psychosis, and when doing some digging, we learned that this title is actually a Caesar cipher, and it does translate to the Spanish word for psychosis. And shout out to the comment section here, because I definitely wouldn't have figured this out. I just would have thought it was gibberish, and I'm not too proud to admit that. Now, as we get into this episode, we see this image of Riley, and each slide she seems to get more and more sad. And then we jump over to her emotions and see that they are walking around trying to find a way to actually help Riley. And for some reason, Envy has a shotty. And apparently, she's already used it on the deranged form of Envy. Can we get a rip for Envy in the comments? She was just a baby. Now, as the emotions continue to make their way through Riley's mind, they also see Embarrassment, who also looks terrifying here. But luckily, he doesn't actually attack them, and they're able to just keep moving on. But then we get this scene. And while I hate that Joy had to be taken out, the emotions didn't really have much of a choice. And there is still a chance, I think, that if they can actually get rid of whatever's infecting Riley's mind, they may be able to bring her and the other emotions back. Now, after Joy is taken out, we get a flashback of what happened to her right before she was infected. And she confirms that the thing that attacked her is not an emotion, and it has been hiding out in the depths of Riley's mind for at least a few months. And this thing seems to always be trying to trick Riley into believing false realities. And this is where we see the creature actually grabs Joy and it literally takes the light from her eyes. After that, we get to see the other emotions looking up at Riley's headquarters, and then we hear I believe that this alarm was supposed to signify that Riley was having some kind of panic attack, or she was having like some really dark thoughts. But before she can act on them, we see her mother burst through the door, and she tells Riley that she's here for her. But Riley just keeps talking about the accident, believing that her mother isn't actually in the room with her. And then we see the line where her mom asks if Riley has taken her medicine. And this is where things really start to become clear, especially since when Riley asked about her dad, her mom tells her that he's on his way home, meaning that both of Riley's parents are actually alive and well, and this whole car accident stuff is just a false memory in her head. And this really helps us understand why this chapter is called Psychosis, and also finally giving us a name to this mysterious figure. This thing that we see here isn't just an emotion, but rather a physical manifestation of a possible mental illness that Riley has. And this could be bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or even depression. In the final chapter, we see the remaining emotions arguing about if they should still try to go save Riley or not, when ennui and anxiety saying that there may still be a chance to stop this psychosis from hurting Riley any further with all these false memories. Also making a point to say that if they don't do anything, Riley may take the easy way out, which I think you all understand what that means. And since ennui still has 2 bullets in the shotty, they believe that they may be at least able to weaken this disorder, if not just outright destroy it.
I hope you bulletproof, for this about to hurt.
In the next scene, we see Riley's father calling some of Riley's friends to see if they can come over and keep her company. And judging by how Riley looks here, I think that that's a good idea, especially since she's saying that everything hurts and she just wants the pain to end. And to make it even darker, when you slow the video down around the 3-minute mark, we see this upside down message, and it says, "Don't pretend you don't know what you did to me. Every red mark on my body lasts over time." And I think this message was actually directed at Riley's father, implying that he may be the actual root cause of her psychosis. And while part of me wants to believe that this could just be another false memory, I don't think that it is. And another thing that makes me feel like it isn't is because at the end of that scene, we actually see that there's a camera on her counter here. And I don't know if this is meant to actually watch her to make sure she doesn't do anything wrong, or if like her own parents are kind of spying on her here. This whole scene kind of changes the whole parameters of what I thought this AU was going to be about, and makes it so much darker than I even anticipated initially. And even though I've already finished the video at this point, this is me adding like a little note while I'm editing the video. I found this little QR code while looking back at the footage, and it reads, "There's a reason for everything. What is it?" And this kind of helps solidify what I already think about the video, but let's go ahead and get back to like my analysis. Now, back over with the emotions, we see them making their way through a pipe when they actually hear singing in the distance. When Ennui turns on her phone's flashlight, we see Nostalgia come around the corner, and she is the creepiest looking emotion yet. But luckily, Nostalgia still has her mind and claims that she no longer actually wants to do harm, and she allows Ennui to actually take a shot at her. But we can tell that all this death is really starting to take a toll on Ennui, especially because if Nostalgia was still kind of herself, that means that Joy and Envy may have still been kind of lucid as well. And this is really tragic when you think about it. But the crew continues to push forward anyway, saying that this is all for Riley's sake. And she definitely needs some help, because as you can see here, she looks completely out of it even when her friends are trying to speak with her. And at one point, she even starts to see her friends with like these deformed faces. And then we get this scene.
Why would you be afraid, Riley? They were to blame. Most of all, Dad.
Can we please get a Anwi is the GOAT in the comments, please? She has been absolutely handling business in this whole AU. Now, while Emily's scene here was pretty cool, we can't ignore what was just said by the disorder. It says that they were to blame, meaning Riley's parents, and then it says, most of all, Dad. And that was when Anwi took the shot, saying that we agreed not to talk about that, which makes me think that Riley's dad may actually be the real villain here. Because Anwi isn't corrupted and should not be like infected by these false memories. And right after that, we see Fear say that that was in the past. But the disorder lets them know that Riley will always remember the cause of all her pain, no matter how hard she tries to suppress it. And then we see this image of her father laughing. And when you slow the video down, he actually has no shirt for a second. And this adds a even darker layer onto this story. We then see the disorder say that they pushed me to the limit. And by me, it means Riley. And then we see this image of Riley with blood trickling down her mouth and her nose. And when you slow the video down, her shirt is also gone for a second, making the implication of what happened between Riley and her father pretty clear. And I believe that this is why the disorder turns into Riley here. It shows that the disorder is a manifestation of the trauma that Riley has endured. And then Riley says that when she takes herself out, she'll be another one in the crowd, meaning that she doesn't believe that anybody would actually miss her when she's gone. But before this idea can take root, we see our GOAT tosses this spear and destroys the thought. And Riley opens her eyes to feel her friends embracing her, saying that she's not alone and that she should think about all the people that love her. And at this part where it says we can overcome your disorder, we see the word briefly flash red and it says trauma instead of disorder. And now when I look back and see the unopened pill box on the counter, implying that Riley was never taking her pills, it kind of makes sense. These pills are meant to treat schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and things in that realm. But I think that Riley actually had like some form of PTSD due to what her father put her through. PTSD can cause people to have like dangerous intrusive thoughts, nightmares, cause them to repress memories. And when they start to actually think about like bad memories, it can cause them to have high blood pressure, which may like kind of explain why she was having all these nosebleeds. This also makes the camera that we saw set up in her room have a very dark implication as well. And it puts a whole new spin on why Riley looked so uncomfortable when her dad was in the room with her. And to take it even a step further, this may also explain why she had false memories of her parents being lost in a car crash. Maybe that was less of a fear and more of a hope of what could happen because she wanted to be out of this situation. And now when I look back at the title from episode 1, it makes so much more sense why the creator named it Traumatized. It actually kind of fits perfectly into the theory that I'm coming up with. But with that being said, I'm obviously not a doctor, I'm not a shrink, so I could be off. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Am I on point with what happened to Riley here, or do you think there's a different thing going on here? Because my interpretation is very dark. You may have a better one. Pound for pound, while this AU was a lot darker than I thought it was going to be, I thought that the story was actually pretty well done, even though it dealt with a lot of very touchy subjects. As always, thank you all for watching. Make sure to check out this video on the screen next, and we'll see you tomorrow with another one. Peace, peace.